John LaCosta here, InternetMarketingExperience.com, here with Phil Nicolosi, JD of Internet Legal Armor. So, Phil, today we're going to talk about privacy policies. I've worked with local business clients full time now for about 10 years. And I got to tell you, that's one of the things that usually goes by the wayside with a client. They typically don't understand the value of having a comprehensive privacy policy document. So I'd like to ask you the question today. Why does a business or even a small business owner or a startup need to have a comprehensive privacy policy on their website?
Great question. It's probably a twofold answer. The first and less obvious would be because they want to have credibility, of course, with their customers. I mean, if you go onto a website and you're going to purchase a product or service, and you're going to give them, personal information to do that, when you go onto a policy or a disclosure statement that says, here's how we're going to secure and use your information only for these purposes, and we'll secure it, blah blah blah. That gives you a nice feeling as a consumer, and you feel like your information will be secure, and you feel like it won't be used in ways in which you're not aware or in which you may not want. So for credibility, but really the big reason is liability. That's the main concern is if you don't have a privacy policy that adequately discloses exactly what you're doing with people's information, website visitor information. If you don't do that, then you can be liable under federal and state laws. So, more so. Well, I guess you're interested in both equally, of course, credibility and avoiding liability. But liability is a big one because, of course, you can get in big trouble from these regulatory agencies for not disclosing what you're supposed to disclose by way of collection and use.
So does it only take one complaint for the FTC to start investigating a business, which could then lead to a complaint
Hard
and
to say.
potentially a fine?
Hard to say. Yeah, potentially it could just take one complaint, but they're pretty overwhelmed. So it's tough to say. It'd be the nature of the complaint and how the information is being used and that sort of a thing. But one complaint could, in theory, do it. But it just depends. It's hard to say for sure if that would do the trick because usually they take action when multiple consumers complain and they get wind of something, but that's not always true. So, if you're a large website, for example, and one person complains that maybe the information was given away to a third-party marketer, and they got a call or they got an email against their wishes, and that they figure that information could only have been shared through that website. If enough people call, sure. But would it just take one potentially? Yeah, I think it could. So yeah, the point is you should be on guard and not do it because it could just take one. But I wouldn't be too worried if you just have one instance of someone complaining. Just fix it, right
Yeah.
away. Find out what it is you've done wrong, address their concerns, and move forward.
So there have been some companies, though, in recent history that have gotten some heat by the FTC for lack of having a comprehensive disclosure for some of their practices. One being Skitty Kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that example of how a company was basically obliterated by a privacy policy or lack of disclosure?
Well, that was more because of the child disclosures. They were collecting information from children under the age of 13, so they didn't exactly use a proper. They weren't compliant with COPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. They didn't make the proper disclosures as COPA mandates that you do, and the FTC, which governs that, called them out basically and took them down and said that you've got to start doing this, and they didn't do it, and so they ended up. Well, it wasn't the FTC shut them down. It was the fact that the consent decree and the fact that they were violating the act was made public by the FTC, and that was hurting them in the search engines. That was like I think one of the first things people would see when they would type in the name Skitty Kids.
To this point right now, if somebody typed in Skitty Kids into Google, the number one result would be an FTC violation. I think the website has gone down since then, but it's like a remaining trademark on that brand.
Yeah, well, that's how they took them down. Then taking them down in that sense of the word is exactly what happened due to it. So yeah, that's one way where you can obviously lose your whole entire business because your brand has now been tarnished because you were using information that you shouldn't, you're using it in a way that you didn't disclose, so you were using it in a way that you shouldn't have,
Mm-hmm.
because that's illegal. And they lost, like I was saying about credibility, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as the first point of a privacy policy,
Yeah.
you know, they lost credibility.
What about with Lord and Taylor?
Well, you know, that was a little bit different because the privacy policy issue again.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we're talking about disclosures, privacy disclosures. So it's all, if you think about it, it's all one big blanket disclosure that you have to make when you're talking about how do I use your information? How do I collect it? How do I use it? Do I share it?
Mm-hmm.
Do I sell it? Lord and Taylor is a little bit different because they weren't making disclosures that had to do with privacy policies. They were making disclosures that had to do with their influencers.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it a disclosure? Yeah, they weren't making it. It was against the FTC Act, but it wasn't related to information they were using. Just to be clear, okay, it was based on what they weren't telling the consumer about product endorsements and social media influencers, really.
Which kind of relates to our last video about sponsored endorsers.
Right. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. Well, actually, a lot. But it isn't a privacy policy disclosure per se. It's a little bit different, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a disclosure they weren't making. And yeah, it does relate, I guess, back to our last video.
So if they had made that disclosure in a document, it might have helped alleviate some of the heat that was brought down on them.
Yes.
What about?
Well, actually, their influencers, the product promoters, needed to do that, and they weren't
Okay,
doing it. They weren't disclosing the material connection that was being made.
got it. What about SmartClick? That's a recent example too.
Yeah. SmartClick essentially paid promotions. Again, you know, we're not talking about, they receive commissions and other payments each time a consumer would click on the links. Um, you know, disclosure of these arrangements were located, I think, in the About Us section or somewhere hidden, links at the bottom of the page. They weren't really, they weren't visible, and because they weren't visible, they weren't deemed to be properly given the consumer the notice that they needed. And
So it was
because of
the
that,
placement. It was the placement of the actual document links
right,
was identified as being not sufficient,
that's correct.
which is what put them in trouble.
Yeah, essentially.
It sounds like we could make a video about that soon.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, what about Google Play, Phil?
Well, Google Play, you know, you mean what they did recently? Yeah,
Mhm.
they just basically told all app developers you had to have a privacy policy. Um, and, you know, if you don't have a privacy policy, we're going to take your app off the store. It was as simple as that. But it was a major step.
Right. I think there was somewhat of a mad rush when Google released that information, and developers knew that they had to have a privacy document, or their app would be removed. You
Yeah,
know, I mean, I suppose if they didn't care and it got removed, no big deal. But those that were serious with their apps, that was a big deal. Um, you know, in the internet marketing world, we can't help but wonder, well, how is this going to impact us in the very near future? Because, I mean, you know, we design websites all the time. We run marketing campaigns all the time. You know, if Google Play is starting to require privacy policy documents for their apps, you know, hypothetically, what would prevent Google from wanting privacy policies for all websites in their index? You
right.
know,
Yeah, that's a possibility for sure.
of course, you know, who knows what kind of timetable could be on that. But I mean, if Google Play is demanding them for apps, it would be logical that they would be going after websites at some point in the near future.
Yeah,
I mean, if Google is all about user experience and being transparent to the website visitor what is happening while someone's on a website, you would think that at some point they're going to require that type of disclosure document.
yeah,
And I would say there's probably quite, I mean, I don't have the exact statistics, but I would imagine that there's a lot of websites out there lacking privacy policies versus ones that actually have a good comprehensive document that was drafted by an attorney or came from a credible source.
yeah,
So there's probably a lot of work to do out there on the internet in regards to this. Um, you know, one thing that I've seen in my world, Phil, is I've actually had internet marketing campaigns be halted by Google specifically because a privacy policy document was not in place.
hmm.
Now, it's not for every type of campaign, but specifically medical based campaigns. Google has shut down campaigns or never let it get started based on the fact that a privacy document was not in place.
Hmm.
So I think it's reasonable to say that that is something that's, could be coming through the pipeline. And when you think about getting inside the good graces of Google and abiding by what they want and their rules, you can't also help but think about search engine optimization. Is there a hidden algorithm somewhere in their indexing system that actually looks for privacy policy documents and potentially assesses credibility in a search engine optimization perspective if a company website has a privacy policy document? We don't know, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, Phil, the third reason we should talk about today is the fact that, uh, not only should they have them for credibility, not only because of major ad networks, but the website visitor liability. Businesses, I think, are somewhat, they don't really realize how liable they could be based on the visitors that arrive at their website on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And a disclosure like a good comprehensive privacy policy can offer protection. Can you offer some more insight on that?
Well, I mean, like, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, as long as you're disclosing clearly and properly, and when I say properly, all the ways in which you're using personal information that you've collected from the visitor, as long as you've done that in a disclosure statement, like you said, a big blanket disclosure statement, which is really all privacy policy is, you're at least not going to run afoul of Section 5 of the FTC Act. And also, consumers might have private causes of action potentially against you, I suppose, for using their information. And, I suppose they could sue for damages to the extent that they had any real damages. But really, it's with the regulatory agencies and getting slapped with fines because the consumers are complaining about what you're doing.
Mhm.
So liability really runs with the regulatory agencies. And yeah, I mean, as long as you're making what they want you to make in terms of disclosures under Section 5, which is the anti-deception section of the FTC Act, which says that you can't do anything or say anything or conduct your business in any way, really, which is deceptive, um, which is obviously a very broad statement, but that's what Section 5 does, is it prevents deception, and as long as you don't run afoul from that, then you're going to avoid the liability for information use. So it's not necessarily that you need it to protect yourself from website visitor liability. You do, but it's mandatory.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just legally required. So it's off the bat, if you don't have it, there's going to be instant liability, depending upon how
Right.
you're using the information.
So, having good comprehensive privacy policy documents is near and dear to your heart. You've put a lot of time and efforts and investment into creating a platform that makes this easier to accomplish by the average business owner or startup. And that's internetlegalarmor.com.
Right.
Um, so, Phil, tell us a little bit about what went into the development of Internet Legal Armor and what it's about.
Um, well, the development of Internet Legal Armor was really, we could talk about that for a long time, I guess.
Yeah.
It took many years in the making to come up with that, and um,
The basics of it is the fact that it is a system, an online based system that allows you to generate comprehensive privacy policy documents on your own.
that's correct.
And while you can hire an attorney to do a document for you, um, what is better than nothing is to at least have a good comprehensive document that's come from a generator that was developed by somebody like yourself.
Right.
Um, So, the options there, Phil, you're making it very easy for somebody to be able to fix the liability problem that could potentially be right there on someone's website. You're making it easy for them to satisfy the requirement, if they're a medical-based business, of having a comprehensive privacy policy. Um, so you've really actually taken a lot of the dirty grunt work out of creating a privacy policy and made it through this generator.
Yeah, essentially.
Phil, if somebody goes to internetlegalarmor.com right now and purchases a subscription, what happens? What do they do?
So, good question. If you're a subscriber to Internet Legal Armor, essentially what you're getting is a license to generate all the different types of documents on that system. But we're talking about privacy policies mainly today. So, as an example, you sign up as a basic user, which would give you the right to generate an unlimited amount of website documents for your single website, or you can have an unlimited license for multiple domains. The process is really simple. You go onto my platform as a subscriber, you log in, you access the generator. Once you're on the privacy policy generator, as an example, you'll go through a series of information screens, which consist of you providing basic information about your website and type of business. Then it takes you forward screen by screen, and it'll ask you questions about how you're collecting user information. We're talking about personally identifiable information. Personal information is really what you have to be mainly concerned about. So we talk about and other information as well, but mainly the personal information. We take you through all that. How do you use it? Identify what it is that you are collecting, and then from there, the screen just take you through a litany of questions, basically, kind of like an attorney would do. Are you using cookies? What types of cookies are you using? All this information that you're gathering, are you bundling it? If you're bundling information, or if you're not bundling information, what are you doing with it? Are you selling it? Are you linking people's personal information in conjunction with like past sales history and stuff of that nature, and then giving it to advertisers? So we ask you all these questions in detail. You answer them, you get through them, and then the answers you provided will go to create a comprehensive privacy policy that's generated from the system based on your answers, provided to you on the screen, and also has a Word document emailed to you.
So at that point, then somebody who is a member and they go through the questions and they get that document, all they have to do is copy and paste it into their website, and it's a privacy policy, and
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, because your answers have really told the program what to do. It's an intelligent document assembly program, John, is really what it is. So it doesn't work for you.
Hmm.
And again, the work really has been done over the years of me creating the system,
Hmm.
and my staff and I continually trying to tweak everything to make sure that we have everything up to date, compliant with any changes, any reinterpretations by the FTC, stuff of that nature. So the work is really done by us in advance, and you provide the answers, and the system will generate the document for you. So, and it's all in real time, and it's all done very quickly. Of course, there's roughly maybe 25, 28, or 29 screens, I think, in the privacy policy
Hmm.
generator. So, it'll take you a good 10, 15 minutes to get through, maybe longer. Um, but the work is essentially done for you because it's all drawing the right proper clauses, okay, for your policy. It's drawing them out of a pool of clauses that I've already created, the end text. And you can, as you can imagine, there's hundreds of different variations depending upon your activities and how you're using the information. It'll take those clauses, assemble them into the document that you need, specific to how you're using that information, and it does all the work for you.
So it doesn't really sound like there is, there could be a more economical way to get this done than to use something like Internet Legal Armor to get this to pump out a privacy policy document.
Yeah, probably not. Now, well, unless you go and you use a free generator. I am
Yeah.
aware that there are free privacy policies specifically. There are free privacy policy generators that have come to my attention. So when you're talking about economical, it doesn't get more economical than free. But of course, what are you really getting?
Yeah.
It's a free document generator. So I think that the audience here is probably smart enough to understand that you don't always get what you pay for when it's for free.
Right.
So you know, assuming that you're not using anything for free, of course, this is the most economical way for you to go about it because you're not paying an attorney like me $300 an hour or whatever or
Hmm.
more
Yep.
to do these by scratch. I've done, what you need when you come to Internet Legal Armor. Chances are, I've drafted it before on behalf of a different client, and that's the whole point of Internet Legal Armor. Is in my decade plus of doing work for just internet-based clients, I've done a lot of privacy policies, and I've helped them out in that regard. So chances are, when you come to Internet Legal Armor, however you're using the information is already going to be accounted for, and I've seen it before.
Yeah.
So you're drawing all my knowledge, and you're drawing all of our experience as internet attorneys and my staff. In the prior time that we have to serve people, we're bringing it all forward to you to house it, if you will, in this platform.
Mm.
So when we talk about the value there, That's what the free generators and stuff like that aren't going to do for you. I'm quite certain that they're not constantly monitoring things and making sure that the generators are up to date.
Yeah.
And I've gone through a few of them, and they're nowhere near as comprehensive as ours is. As an example, the COPA privacy policy generator that we have just for children under the age of 13, collecting their information and using it. We have a COPA generator specifically for that. Um, you know, to my knowledge, it's the most comprehensive one on the market right now in terms of automated generators.
Yep.
So yeah, it is the most economical solution because it's the best solution for the money.
And one thing that I really like that you've done too with InternetLegalArmor.com is the fact that you've actually made it a revenue generating opportunity for an internet marketer, a web developer, an advertising agency to be able to draft these documents for their clients.
Yeah.
Because most business clients may not necessarily want to do the legwork or may not necessarily understand all of the questions as well as, say, somebody who's in the business would be able to answer them. So you also offer a white label unlimited license on InternetLegalArmor.com that allows a website developer and internet marketer to develop these documents in an unlimited amount, offer them to their clients, and Internet Legal Armor doesn't even need to be anywhere labeled on the document.
That's
It
right.
can be underneath their brand name.
That's right.
So talk about just improving, reducing the liability of a client. They're actually getting a revenue, another source of revenue for their business as well.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
definitely check out InternetLegalArmor.com to take this one step further.
Yeah.
So we will see you then.
Thanks, John.